Hi, and welcome to the Passionistas Project podcast. Today we're talking to Madonna Cacciatore, the new executive director of Christopher Street West, the 501c3 nonprofit that produces the annual LA Pride Festival and Parade. Prior to taking on this role, Madonna worked as director of special events at the Los Angeles LGBT Center, overseeing projects including their annual Vanguard Awards and the Simply Divine Food and Wine event. She began her career in activism at AIDS Project LA after doing grassroots work in Washington for marriage equality and volunteering at the Names Project, the AIDS Memorial Quilt. So please welcome to the show, Madonna Cacciatore.
Thank you.
We're really glad to have you here. We're so excited to be doing this interview.
I'm excited to be doing this interview as well.
What are you most passionate about?
I think it's every living thing having a chance to thrive. Every person, every animal, the planet, every tree. I cry for any time a tree's cut down in LA, which is pretty much all the time, so I'm always crying. I'm about to cry now. Yeah, I just care about life.
So how does that translate into what you do for a living?
It translates beautifully because I've been an activist for most of my life. I came out as a lesbian when I was probably 19 years old, and I grew up in Texas, so I had a lot of great friends and I had a lot to deal with. So ending up being here as the executive director of Christopher Street West, LA Pride, is kind of incredible. This isn't where I was headed, I thought. Perhaps it was in some alternate universe. I came to LA to pursue my acting career, and I was doing event production, and I sort of stumbled into the nonprofit world that way. I was hired to do an event fundraiser, a summer party at AIDS Project Los Angeles that was supposed to be a temp job to sort of pay the bills, and then we hit it off, and then I just started working there, and then I produced more events. Meanwhile, I kept my acting, because that's my passion and my career, my acting, and theater has been part of my life, dance and theater for my whole life. So I kept sort of all of my worlds going, trying to believe that I could do all the things. I still believe I can do all the things, but ending up with a trusted, fantastic board of directors and Esteban Montemayor, who's our board president of LA Pride, really putting his faith behind me, and just sort of being a professional gay is pretty incredible. And being able to work with people who have like minds and like spirits and want to make change and want to have a place where people feel they can come out and be safe to do so, and not just come out as, not even just LGBT allies coming out, bisexual people coming out, and not being judged by our own community for who we are or by anyone for who we are. So I feel like I'm in a great position to be where I am. It fits with everything I've done in my life, from lying down on the street in Washington, D.C., yelling "Free Barbara's Bush," to, to being here today. It's all pretty cool.
Tell us a little bit more about your childhood in Texas and what that was like.
We ended up in Texas. My family's from New York, but we ended up there. My dad was in the military, and that's where he met my mom. My grandfather had a restaurant called Dan's Venetian Club. My mom's side of the family is from Venice and Parma in Italy, and my father's side was from Sicily. So they all argued about who spoke the right dialect, and they always dove into Italian when they were upset. So I know all the bad words. So my dad was in the restaurant business, and my parents were, we ate well throughout my life, but I also worked really hard when I was young. We all worked in the restaurant. I washed dishes, I served people. My dad cussed at everybody who came in the door. He loved Italian food. I mean, that was his specialty, but he also cooked an amazing cheeseburger. And so somebody would come in and, "What kind of mood is Salvatore in today? Can I order a cheeseburger?" "God damn son of a bitch, yeah, all right, whatever. Yeah. How you doing today, John?" And he would go into a tirade, and then he would be honored to fix them whatever they want. Of course, I eat no meat anymore. Let's make that clear. But I grew up with everything. So I was raised by Italian Democrats in the middle of a red state. At the time, though, it was a little different. There were just the signs in the yards, and people would pull people's signs out of the yards for whatever politician, which is very mature. But it's not like it is now. I feel like it's gotten way worse. So I still was able to just be who I was. Probably all our neighbors were Republicans. We were the only Democrats. We were the Kennedy Catholic Democrat Italians. I loved what all that stood for at the time, because for me it was about being courageous and taking care of people. And so it was interesting growing up, but we always went back to New York. I have cousins, and I'm actually rediscovering all my cousins that were either in Texas with me. Interestingly enough, there's a book called The Road Back to Thurber, which is a little town called Thurber, Texas. And this pocket of Italians ended up there. And there are the Pontramolis, the Visentines, and I'm finding them all again. And so the Cacciatores and the Raphaels, which was my mom's side of the family. So I was very much influenced in the Italian culture, but we were in the middle of Texas. So it was sort of like not the Texas for me that I see represented sometimes. It was a different version of it, and it was pretty cool. I liked it.
Tell us about your acting and dancing career and what kind of projects you were involved with.
When I was 6 years old, my mom put me in ballet. And I was very incongruous my whole life. I was in ballet, and then I was playing army with the boys. So, I was always considered myself a tomboy. But I would also go do bar and ballet class and love that equally as much, because I feel like dancers are the most finely tuned athletes there are. I don't care who you are. If you're a dancer, you've got a greatly tuned body. And basically, whenever I was dancing, I started really digging like jazz and modern dance at the time. Now it's contemporary. So throughout my life, I always danced. I danced for about 42 years. I really still wish I'd feel like a fool right now, but I always feel like I have that as part of who I am and could go into a dance studio very easily. But I moved to Chicago and did my first musical, which was Carousel. I played Louise, and my best friend Gail Beckman played Julie. We've been friends ever since. That was in 1981. I was also in dance companies, but I transitioned into some musical theater. And then I moved to D.C., and I became part of this feminist dance troupe. And we were doing this music festival called Sister Fire, which was a women's music festival. And there were people there like Tracy Chapman and Alice Walker, and it was really cool. You were just in groups of amazing women just creating art. And one of the pieces we did was about the Chinese foot binding. This woman, Sandra Kamen, directed this company, and she wrote about women's sort of history. So all of our dance was very powerful. We danced with sticks, and we created the witch burnings, and we did all these things. But that was called Yashen and the Golden Carp, and it was about Cinderella's feet being bound, and she being the only one who didn't have the freedom to move about like her stepsisters. So it was just that story, and sort of storytelling in that way was incredibly important to me. And then I transitioned from that. When I moved to D.C., I ended up studying at the Studio Theater Acting Conservatory and the Shakespeare Theater, and took classes at the Folger, the Arena, all the really cool places. D.C. has an amazing theater community. And so that just sort of propelled me. I stopped dancing as much, and I went into theater. And then I got this under 5 role on The Fugitive. It was a little co-star role. And it was the one with Tim Daly. It was that. And I had a little teeny scene with Michelle Hurd, who I still just think is one of the most wonderful people. And I was like, that's it. I'm moving to L.A. I got my own trailer. I'd only ever done theater and extra work. So this was the first time they said, oh, we'll take you to your trailer. And I was like, I have a trailer? I thought I was going to have to stand in the rain and wait for somebody to schlep me somewhere. And so I moved to L.A. to pursue that. And then I just, I got on a few sets, and I did a lot of training. I trained with Dee Wallace. Dee's also one of my mentors, and she taught me that I'm good enough to be here, basically. I was in Dee's masterclass for 3 years with a group of people who are amazing, and we're all still very, very much connected. Many are, you'll see on working, a lot right now. So I felt very blessed in my path, because I was surrounded by people always who were either creatives or who were very passionate about what they were doing in life, whether it was entertainment or nonprofit work or just trying to feed the homeless, So I've been surrounded by great lights. And then, of course, when I moved here, I met Robin McWilliams, who is everything to me. She's clearly the better half of me.
Let's circle back to Washington for a minute and just tell us a little bit about the work you did on the NAMES project, the AIDS Memorial Quilt.
The first year of that quilt, I believe, was in 1987, and I went with my brother's ex-partner, and my brother had just been diagnosed. And then there were 2,000 panels unfurled, and it was the most, I was sobbing. There's a book called the quilt. And there's a little picture of Jimmy and me in it, and he's hugging me, and we had both been sobbing. And then, unfortunately, when it came back 2 years later, my brother's panel was in it. I made a panel for him, and it went from like 2,000 to I think 20,000 to the last year I saw it unfurled. It was 45,000 panels. It stretched from the Capitol almost to the monument on the mall, and it was quite incredible. So I volunteered. And it was a way for me to sort of heal and see that other people were experiencing what I was experiencing, and sort of be in the sisterhood and the brotherhood and of everyone who was dealing with this crisis and this sort of crisis of our government at the same time. Where our brothers, mainly at the time, many gay men were dying, but, it was transcending into all communities. And to see people care and to be in one place like that is really amazing when your heart is completely just broken and astonished. A whole group of people who could be ignored or judged because they got a disease for being gay, or condemned. There was a lot of condemnation going on like there is now. So for me, being in spaces where I could make positive change, and we learned cool things at the Quilt. They taught us how to fold up the entire quilt in 60 seconds. You had volunteers on each corner, and you go fold, 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 and put them in plastic bags. If there was a downpour, you could save the quilt in 60 seconds. I mean, that was pretty cool. Also, I was learning about how activism turns into action. Lying down the street felt just as good, but when you're able to do something that feels like I'm here and I'm making a difference, and I can be standing here and educate people about people who died were actually great people. We're going to be missing a lot in our future because they're gone. Still gets me. So it was life-changing for me because that was the first sort of crisis where people were dying, and I was going to memorials in New York constantly and in D.C. and sitting by people's bedsides and going to hospitals in New York with our brothers who were just, they try to make you wear masks, and like, I'm not wearing a mask, I'm going to hug him. And so it was going from that to sort of seeing them begin to find drugs and things that would help people live, and, where we are now, which is pretty amazing that people with HIV and AIDS can thrive. So that was a pivotal point, and the Names Project was very important to me.
Was that the beginning of your decision to really become an activist? And what's your journey been in that capacity?
I didn't think of myself that way. I didn't think of myself as an activist. I felt like doing what I needed to do to help people live at the time, but also to help other people. And, I'm a big animal activist. I do consider myself an animal activist. Anytime I see an injustice, or, with social media, we see it all too often where you see horrible things happening to animals. I just, literally, I almost can't take it. But I have to do something to save something, So I'm always just like, what can I, we have 5 cats. I'm sorry, but I'm a typical lesbian. And it's because, 3 of them, their mama was taken by a coyote, and we ended up with those 3. And the other one ran into a florist on the corner of Wilshire and Western, and we had to take that one. And then the last one was on the side of a highway, so we're done. But we rescue, and we have friends. My friend Addie Daddio, peace out, girl, I love you. She's also a great passionista, by the way. She has an organization called Love That Dog Hollywood. She rescues dogs. My friend Angie Rubin, who's also a music editor, rescues every cat in the world. I mean, there are a lot of good people doing a lot of good work. So my activism, I guess, was just me sort of progressing through life and seeing things that I wanted to adjust or try to make better, or try to stop pain for someone. I'm not used to talking about myself in that way. It's more about being around people who are just really good people. And we have a terrible homeless crisis in LA right now. It's everywhere. I mean, we live in the Hollywood Dell, which is kind of up a hill, and there are encampments everywhere. And there's this desire to make things better and help homeless people get off the street. We were actually able to help a woman who set up in one of the tunnels there. We had to keep moving her because she got beaten up once. She had a big dog and a little cat, and they all lived in this tent. We were able to get them into a place where she now is thriving. She's working. She's got her animals, and she's in a place where she's actually getting herself back on her feet. But had it been left to some people in the community, they would just get her out of here. She doesn't belong here. Well, it is true that also there are aggressive, mentally ill, homeless people as well. And I have as much compassion for them as I do for anybody who's on the street. But it's like we've also had people break into our building. And so it's walking the line between safety and caring. But it's so out of control right now, I don't think anybody really knows what to do. People are struggling with how to deal with it. And so we're all activists. We're all active in whatever we're doing. It's just that my activism or my life has led me toward, and I think it stems from my parents. My parents were very caring people. They would feed the entire neighborhood lasagna. They would feed the ducks lasagna. They had everybody lasagna. But they didn't judge. My dad had a reaction to my being gay, but then he wanted to invite her over for dinner 1 second later. So my mom was always that person who's like, oh, honey, she's very soft-spoken. I just love everybody, and I just love who you are, and it doesn't matter. You just, and she was just my best friend, So for me, it's just been about carrying an open heart and love in the world, and sometimes that's incredibly painful, too.
We're Amy and Nancy Harrington, and you're listening to the Passionistas Project podcast and our interview with Madonna Cacciatore. To learn more about all the exciting events at this year's LA Pride Festival between now and June 9th, visit lapride.org. Now here's more of our interview with Madonna. Talk a little bit about your work at the LGBT Center as the Director of Special Events.
I went there right after AIDS Project Los Angeles. A position opened up. I applied twice. I got in the second time. I had seen Lori Jean speak, the CEO of the center. She's one of my mentors in the world. Actually, Lori and I were probably circling each other at Sister Fire, the event I mentioned, because we were both in D.C. at the time. So I went to work at the center. I finally got hired as an event manager and then promoted to a director. And we did 7 or 8 galas together, maybe 7, and Simply Divine, food and wine event. Another role model for me, Susan Feniger. I love that woman dearly. And David Bailey and Lori Deddens. We did this LGBTQ food and wine event, and we actually ended up bringing it the last year that I was there, which was 2 years ago, to Hollywood Forever Cemetery. So having a food and wine event in a cemetery is really awesome, especially Hollywood Forever, because it's kind of iconic. And they do the movie screenings there, so it's a cemetery, but it's also the celebration place. It's really this cool mix. So it was very successful there. But we did many, many great fundraising events together. An Evening with Women was one of my favorites, Linda Perry. Every time I say a name, I'm like, these people have influenced me so greatly. Linda gave every year. She would help us get artists, great artists, like Pink and Christina Aguilera and Sia and Ozzy Osbourne. And every year we had this amazing lineup of music in honor of women. And Linda, she produced it, she directed it, but I just felt lucky to be in the room with a lot of these people and raising money. When you get to announce at a gala that you raised $1.3 million in a night, that's a great feeling. And you've raised it for an organization that's using it wisely. So the center is one of the best. Their charity rating and their cost of fundraising is very low. They've always been really great at that. That's thanks to Lori Jean and pretty much the entire development staff there that's helped facilitate that. I worked there for 6 years, and I wasn't intending to leave. I was just going to retire there, and then I was approached to put my name in the hat for Christopher Street West, which I did willingly.
They did an extensive search for the position that you now hold at LA Pride. So what do you think they saw in you, and why did you ultimately decide you wanted to take the job?
Well, Esteban and I have been very candid with each other about that. And so have many of the board members. We had a few board members who were termed off in October, but they're all amazing people. I've only been here since July, so it's not even a year, it's just a few months. But Pride is an interesting concept. It started as a march. It started in reaction to Stonewall riots. And so Pride is many things to many people. So it's very eclectic. It's very fluid, like our community has become very fluid. It's not one thing. And you can't try to make it one thing. can't try to make it what this demographic wants or what that. You have to sort of look at it with a big open mind and heart. And so Esteban has told me one of the things they liked about me is that I have a history and I have been an activist, but I also have an openness to our whole community. And I feel like there's a lot of value in our youth, in our transgender community, and in the Two Spirits community. I mean, the indigenous community has been probably one of the communities that's been stepped on by the white man, if I'm just being blunt, more than any of us, you know? So I feel like there's an opportunity to look at things from a bird's eye view and sort of I'll never get everything right for everybody. And I know that, and I'm not going to try to do that. What I am going to try to do with this great board of directors is help make improvements, help make people feel included. I went to 2 Interpride conferences. One was in Canada. Tribal elders were there, and there was a woman who spoke. I literally wept in her arms. I didn't see it coming. I went to tell her, you know, what she said was very relevant to me because the Native community has always spoken to my heart. I did the 23andMe. I was hoping there would be some, but there wasn't. And I was like, damn it, I'm all Italian. I love that, but I wish there was some Native in there. But they had an elder council basically talk. And one of the young people said was, we don't need inclusive space. We need brave space. We need space to come out. We need space to be who we are unapologetically. And then she said, I don't need to be in your canoe. You don't need to be in my canoe. We are different people. We're riding in different canoes. We're having different journeys. What we do need to do is go down the river together and figure out the waters wherever they are. We have to do that together. That image just stuck out for me in my leadership at Pride to make sure that I'm not trying to be in anybody's canoe. I don't even need to pretend that I understand, that I know what you're going through. But I do need to be compassionate about what you're going through. And then my canoe's next to yours. And basically whatever I can do to help us get down here together, that's what I'm here to do. So it's like throwing a festival is very tricky because you can only do so many things in one weekend. So what we're doing is trying to create Pride 365 here, where we have different events for different demographics. We had a trans brunch last year. We're working on a new trans program called Platform, which is a policy and leadership training program for the trans community, and we'll have some sort of graduation in June at Pride. So we're working on different programs and supporting other organizations because we don't have a health service organization, but we are the umbrella. I feel like we should be sort of a leader for other organizations and be giving back. So that's what we're going to be doing this year as well.
What do you think are the key skills that you bring to your job here?
I think listening is a huge missed opportunity most of the time. I listen. Sometimes it results in me trying to take on too much, admittedly, but I'd rather try things and they not work out that way, but maybe we could try it a different way than not try something at all. Also, growing up where I did and with parents who dealt with their own struggles, I learned to navigate personalities and energy and where somebody might be in the moment, I guess, is a phrase I would use because I was always living in the moment. You know, my parents were awesome, but they also struggled with their own addictions, so sometimes that resulted in different behaviors, so I would have to navigate those. And I would also say that in any nonprofit, we have a board of 15 people. Every one of those people have incredibly different ways of doing things, and they're all valuable. So how do you navigate? I think it's one of my skills is like listening and focusing energy where it needs to go. Sometimes I need help focusing my own energy because I want to go do all the things all the time and I can't do that. But yeah, I think listening and sort of trying to keep the flow going basically in a positive direction.
We read that you like to find projects that advance social justice through creativity and artistry. Why is that important to you and how do you do that?
My creative self, my dancer self, my actor self, all those things have helped me. Creativity has helped me through any hard time I've ever had. And it's also helped me through the good times. Like, I thrive when I'm on a stage. I thrive when I'm doing work that's impacting a whole bunch of people at the same time. I love doing theater. Theater's always been at my soul. You know, I just love creating character and finding bits of myself and observing life when creating character. It doesn't take you away from what's happening in the world, but it helps find a positive focus for what's happening in the world. And some of the best artists are the ones who have been through the most difficult things in their lives. And so I see people take hard times and create art from them too, and that's inspirational to me. I mean, watching a great performance is just, God, that's what inspires me. That's what I want to do. When you watch somebody just go to those nuances in themselves and take you on a journey, that's everything. Anytime I've ever done anything, dance or theater, or I got to do one episode of How to Get Away with Murder, being on a set with somebody like Viola Davis, oh my God. I was very humbled and also very empowered by that experience. And it doesn't matter. Robin and I just shot a very short film at AFI Conservatory with these young filmmakers who are so inspirational, and they're so beautiful, and they're so engaged. And you're just creating these moments, and that you watch them work, and you go, God, I'm inspired by this person's like 23 years old, and they already have this beautiful skill that they're honing right now. I wish I'd done that when I was younger. I have no regrets about it, but I wish my younger self, I could have said, you can do that, and you'll be okay. So I love seeing people who believe in themselves like that.
Having a front row seat, basically, to the LGBTQ movement, what do you think is the most significant changes you've seen, and what do you think still needs to be done?
We made a lot of progress since 2008 when we were talking about Proposition 8 and, since Ellen came out. I mean, if you just think of when Ellen came out and the hell she went through to just come out, and it's much more acceptable to sort of come out today than it was when I was young or in any time in between then. However, I think we made a lot of progress when marriage equality became the law of the land, and that we were able to say that we could get married. I can call my wife my wife. I couldn't have said that 5 years ago. Now, of course, I've never thought of myself as a wife. I don't even know what the word is, but I always sort of related more masculine in my growing up, and then I was sort of like a butch lesbian when I was younger, and so now I could do that. My younger self, I did have a mullet. I remember Ellen's mullet. Mine sort of looked like hers. And then when I was younger, people would actually call me sir sometimes. I'd go, thank you, sir, because I had very short hair. And I had actually no boobs. And because I was a dancer, I had no body fat at all. So I was kind of lean and mean at the time. Now, still, in spite of what's happening, I still feel like, I love what President Obama said, the arc of history is long. So I feel like even though we went to this great place and we all feel like, oh man, it feels like we're going backwards. We're not going backwards. We're going forward, but somebody's trying to pull us backwards, I guess, is the way I look at it, and we're not going there. Yes, they're trying to take more rights away, but I can still be in a group of straight people. And I mentioned Gail Beckman earlier. She and her husband Bill have been my friends all these years. They live in Vegas. We go there all, as much as we can, and we're in groups of their friends who are like, so Madonna and Robin, when you were married, let's see your wedding pictures. And they're talking to us in a way that we just want to be talked to. Like, we're just people who love each other and got married. They're not talking to us about, well, you're gay, so, or however people identify. They're really just interested in who we are. And I think that's what we have to keep doing. We have to keep just remembering who we are. Our brand for LA Pride last year was #JustBe, and basically I think that applies to anybody, anywhere, anytime. Just be who you are. If you're an asshole, if you're going to hurt somebody else, then you're not welcome in my world, and you're not welcome in this world, because this is about respect, mutual respect, and love for one another, and that's basically what we're here to do. I think we're certainly a long way from where we were, for the good, but we've been challenged again, so we have to step up. And honestly, I thought I was really done. I honestly thought that I wasn't going to have to protest as much. I think a lot of us thought that, and now here we are. Since 2016, my wife started drinking wine. That woman never drank before that day. So if we come home at night, she's like, can we have wine? And I'm like, oh my God, who are you? Yes, we can. But yeah, it's just changed the way we have to step up right now.
What's been your biggest professional challenge, and how did you overcome it?
I'm probably having my biggest professional challenge because our community is so diverse and so passionate about how each person has gotten where they are today. And each person in our community has traveled through challenges. I actually, very, very fortunate. In September, I got to go to China with the Los Angeles LGBT Center. I was already here, but it was a trip we already had planned, and we were going to visit LGBT young leaders in China. They've come over here and done, we'd worked with them at the center, so different groups would come through and we would talk to them. The challenges here are looking at our community's diversity and figuring out how to create brave space for everybody. And then going back to China, we went to 4 different cities all around China. So I was seeing and hearing things that I was experiencing 20 years ago, but with people who were really actively making change in a very difficult situation. They can try to raise money, but they can't talk about it on social media. They can't really they have to invite people verbally. You can't have, sort of organized events like that. So basically it was interesting to me to be there and to be doing that work with Daryl Cummings, an amazing group of people at the center, and then come home and go, wow, my challenges feel really different right now. What I'm not trying to do is please every person in the world. What I'm trying to do is understand how far our movements come and how we situate ourselves, because it's always fluid. There's never a comfortable moment, really. So it's like, where are we in this movement at this point? And that changes all the time. So, my biggest challenge is right now, and it's navigating everything I know with where I'm going to take my leadership with CSW and in what kind of a legacy I want to leave here. And also working with a lot of different people and with a lot of different personalities and a lot of different opinions and a lot of anger and a lot of happiness. I mean, we run the gamut because we've all been through so much. So I feel like I'm really challenged right now, and I might be like calling you guys and going, help me out. It's really just staying in your truth. That's it, And that's what Robin helps me do that. Because if I come home and I'm like, there's this happening and this, and she says, just do what you do. And that's what I just keep trying to remember, just do what you do. Sometimes I just need a reminder about keeping myself true to myself.
What's the most rewarding part of your career?
Teaching through love and kindness, seeing people kiss, seeing transgender people feel safe in any environment, seeing someone do something that they may not have felt safe to do. Many of us weren't doing the work we're doing. So yeah, seeing somebody walking around with HIV that's perfectly healthy. There are many walking examples of things that are rewarding to me.
What advice would you give to a young woman who wants to be an advocate or just do good with her life?
Just stay true to yourself. Stay true to the reason you started doing this. Don't let people throw you off. Listen to people. Don't listen to the negative voices, but listen to the voices of people who you know are caring and who maybe have experience or who even are starting out. For example, I was telling you about that little film we did. By watching the director and the cinematographer work, I was learning more about myself. I was learning more about, how can I, So there's always a lesson for you somewhere. And sometimes it's the lesson of how you want to move forward, and sometimes it's the lesson of the voices you don't need to hear anymore. Because some of the voices are not helpful. Some of them are negative. There's a lot of hate spewing right now and people being beaten up. So whatever's happening, you have to go back to your internal self, your true self, and realize why you started doing this to begin with, and just sort of reconnect with that.
What's your definition of success?
Success is happiness, just being able to thrive, just being able to live in a place where you can be yourself. And if that place, whether it's a physical place or just an internal place, just being able to live in a place where you're happy with who you are.
Thanks for listening to the Passionistas Project podcast and our interview with Madonna Cacciatore. If you're in Los Angeles between now and June 9th, be sure to check out one of the many LA Pride Festival events, including the opening ceremony on June 7th, the LA Pride Festival on June 8th and 9th with headliners Meghan Trainor and Years, and the LA Pride Parade in West Hollywood on June 9th. Visit lapride.org to get all the details. And be sure to subscribe to the Passionistas Project podcast so you don't miss any of our upcoming inspiring guests.